once again. Welcome to the Perceptional, elevating all your senses, expanding your curiosity. So plug in now as we welcome your host, Dr. James Donito.
Welcome once again to the Perceptional, episode number 9. You must be interested in something we have to say because you keep coming back. Our show is now in the top 5%. Yes, 5% of the world's total podcasters, 3 to 4 million of them out there. Keep up the good work, spread the word, and more stuff is to come. Today, we're going to talk about one of your biggest fears, cyber attacks, cybersecurity, what you can do with technology, your understanding of it, and how to fortify everything from your dialogue on the internet to whether or not your banking is safe and your emails, you name it. We've got one of the country's greatest experts on cybersecurity and some amazing other technologies and things that he is part of. So today, we are going to bring in a gentleman I've known for probably 10 years or more. I think it's been that long.
Yeah.
Maybe 15. The time is going fast. But we have Harold Hurd here. And Harold is, you're not going by Hal, I guess, unless you're personal friends only. Keep it to Harold.
It's pretty much personal friends only.
Okay,
yeah.
So it's Harold, everybody else here, folks. He's got an interesting background, but we'll start where we all began, our humble beginnings. His parents found him in a little basket in the field, in the fields of Kansas, and brought him in and said, "This child is unique to the world, and we shall raise him to be the savior of mankind."
Oh, no.
And now he ended up at what university to start your journey?
Wichita State University in Kansas.
And you picked up a degree or two there? What did you learn?
Just a couple. One, computer science and electrical engineering. So a lot of fun.
And what was your first job when you got out of school? Did you get like everybody else where you had no experience and you had to go do something outside of your education?
Well, oddly enough, like some of the first jobs I had was I worked for a cable company and was working on some of the older mid-range systems like AS400s, things like that. Midnight shift guy doing tape jockey, they call it at the time, just moving media around, if you would, for backups and recovery. And at that time, that's where I kind of took a deep dive into playing on these systems and seeing what they could do. But that was one of the first ones, and then went pretty much immediately straight into software development for a third-party software firm here in Texas, actually, Irving, to be specific.
So how long have you been in Texas then?
Oh, my. Well, see, born in Kansas, but moved to Texas, lightning fast. My dad was a contractor for one of the aircraft companies up there. And so when I was born, we moved very quickly here because after the work ended there, he came to Dallas. So I've lived in Dallas probably since I was, I'd say 1.5.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been in Kansas, and folks, there's a lot of wind out there. So
and wheat.
And Dorothy left as well. So coming to Texas, I've been here since 1982, so I guess I'm a native Texan as well when you think about how long we've all been here. So you're writing code and you're working for companies. Then you started doing some contract work, gun for hire type things.
Consultancy stuff, trying to fix. I've always been brought in as the guy that fixes the problems. In other words, find the problem to fix the problem. I like to identify it as a hired gun, if you would.
So what would be the interesting applications that a coder gets brought in as far as solving some complex problems or just ways to manipulate data, store data?
Well, the depth of what I do is actually quite deep. It's not just in one facet. It's organizationally, right? From the operation of the organization to the delivery of the products. So I take a holistic look at everything going on inside a company. And it could be the executive leadership all the way down to the developers. But what I got hired initially to do was more from the development side. Have a problem, fix a problem. One of the fun things I had to do was I was one of the first persons to write code to actually move printed paper off mid-range systems. It's never been done before. So I was using some of the native systems to make that actually occur.
You started getting some interest on private projects and little side jobs, so to speak. But as long as I've known you, you've been talking about dreams of building your own quantum computer that could run at room temperature, perhaps even. And so that where I had that same interest in that level of physics, is what bonded, I think, a lot of our dialogue together here. Now, as far as then, as you progressed in the world, and I understand that you are involved in a lot of advisory positions to different boards or different companies. So tell us about some of those, whether it be a local name we might recognize or even national.
Well, there's some national names you recognize, right? So I was on the board of technology advisors for IBM at one time, working with them, looking at some of their technologies, some of the mergers and acquisitions options. How do they get to the next step? And what are some of the wise choices to make? Current CEO of IBM is Ovid. Actually advised him before he was the CEO on acquisition targets while I was working with Citigroup. And then additionally, we're working right now with some of the national laboratories, 3 specifically, on quantum systems, quantum algorithms, and quantum measurements. That's kind of, I'll say drama club. It's not the depth of work I'm doing because right now everyone's doing exploratory work in those areas. And back in 2016, Trump launched or passed the National Quantum Initiative, which is really trying to get the United States to advance its quantum initiatives to be competitive globally. There's a lot of other nefarious countries working on some things that are, I'll say, questionable, and degree of accuracy is variable as well. I've been blessed from a perspective to be able to work with that initiative, as well as work with some lead scientists from IBM to write quantum algorithms to do some fascinating things with current security encryption.
Did you mention one of those national companies was Los Alamos?
That's one of the national laboratories I'm working with. Los Alamos is one, White Sands is another, and Oak Ridge.
Folks, you should know Los Alamos with the Oppenheimer movie out there.
Oh, yeah.
So it definitely has value to this conversation. You also were put in charge of a project recently that all I want to get it from you is a yes or no, but the Pfizer drug company.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So you had certain work with what they were doing with all the data during their COVID vaccination program, right? That's all we can say. Good enough. Just want to show you again the credibility of this man's skills that he brings on companies like that to ask his advice about things.
Well, let me add one element, and it's okay to add this. As I was brought in to do some of that work, it was really to transcend not just Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and AstraZeneca. I had an opportunity to look at all the data and actually had access to the research laboratories.
Okay. And I can probably say that looking at how the outcomes came to our country, they probably didn't listen to him when he had advice to them as to what was going on with what their databases were showing as they were collecting it. And time will tell as to how all this evolves or not. We have to understand before we move into some of these other deeper topics what quantum computing is, what a quantum computer is per se. I believe our brain and our nerve system is an exotic living quantum computer that does it at basically 98.6 degrees. But today's quantum computers are running at supercritical lower temperatures, and that particularly makes them expensive and very bulky, so to speak, so you can't just carry one around like you can your laptop, so to speak.
Yep.
If there is a problem with quantum computing moving to its next level, because we know they're out there, you can buy one and it can do rudimentary calculations, but your average laptop can still outperform it for many things, I understand. If you want to get into how fast it can solve an equation, the quantum computer is used for more open-ended outcomes where you want multiple possibilities, much like the human brain thinks.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the next obstacle that they're trying to overcome in terms of how they're moving quantum computers along? Is there something that's just a definable next step, or they're going blah, 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 they don't know what to do next?
Well, it's been kind of fascinating because IBM at one point was looking for practical quantum projects that really needed the viability of some of these systems and what they could be used for, use cases, if you would. I actually formulated a few and sent them into IBM. We'll see how they go. Some of the challenges that they're having with these systems is that reliability and viability in a production environment, because as you're dealing with these quantum outcomes, we'll call them quantum outcomes, they're different. One quantum system can give you a number, and another quantum system can give you yet another delta. And I understand why, because you're dealing with time and space, a lot of variables that are constantly in oscillation, so you'll never be able to get the same answer. This is why when I was working in the National Quantum Initiative is to try to find a way to capture proper metrics so that you could actually make it viable in a production environment. And some of the aspects that we're working on are quantum encryption, partnering with Cambridge Quantum Computing, which got acquired by Honeywell, leveraging their Iron Bridge quantum number generator for some of those needs that we have. But the real challenges that we have is the practical implications of the outcome of some of these systems. Recently, I think it was over this weekend, Abu Dhabi shut down their quantum program. And I find that fascinating. They're not releasing why they did. NASA also shut down theirs. I don't know if you heard about that. So we had a few different...
Shut down or just went dark, do you think?
I'd go more for dark. Based on the feedback I get from resources that I have a relationship with, it's not down, it's just not shown. There's a lot of things that are coming out of it, good, and as we all know, all things good can be used for nefarious purposes as well. So we have to be cognizant of that and be aware of how.
So the knowledge of this quantum initiative, where the hardware is going, I think gives you a unique advantage in being a programmer, a conceptualizer to this blockchain system, which is basically the future of the computer internet. I think without blockchain, we won't get a Web 3.0. But with the way blockchain worked, especially moving money, the cryptocurrency, it was a pretty inefficient system, and the naysayers were saying that this could never grow to handle all kinds of other purposes, including real estate, because of the massive amount of data processing, therefore electrical usage, and they started doing the math on there. If you think we're going to have trouble making the electric cars charge up, wait do you see what this the blockchain technology was threatening to consume of electricity. But you have solved that problem. You have written code algorithms because of, I guess, your knowledge of how quantum works, and so you have been developing a system, which we'll talk about soon here, on how to make a blockchain system much more efficient, and therefore it's why he is going to be one of the names you're going to recognize around the world soon based on what this gentleman has created here on the blockchain. But as the next step goes, we're going to go into cybersecurity. I have theories as to how the first computer virus hit our world, our computers. I think those were created by government agencies to test systems vulnerabilities, to start inoculating the world to what they knew was going to come, force people to start developing antiviral software. And that is so ubiquitous now with computing that most people know that their computer has to be immunized, so to speak, if they want to get on the web of some sort. And therefore, cybersecurity is, there's a lot of choices right now, and it can do some amazing things to watch what's going on for you and make an instant block in front of something that's going to be attacking you. Because white-collar crime and what's coming over technology bases such as your internet, your email, is more rampant than ever, and we have to have this kind of help here. So who would create cyber threats to you besides sociopathic people who just enjoy seeing chaos in the world? Certainly governments can do that as an attack on another country. That's another one I was thinking of here. Our own government, again, may still be involved in throwing certain test programs out there. And then companies came along. An early one was McAfee. Am I pronouncing his name right?
McAfee.
McAfee, yeah, I always get that. And McAfee, he apparently touched a lot of nerves and went rogue, and now has, I believe, was probably assassinated, much like Jeffrey Epstein was, where he had an unfortunate accident in prison. But he was in exile and still a very big influence to the world from an island somewhere. Who do you know in cybersecurity that enabled you to get on national type of advisory boards? What got you to that level of recognition?
So I had an opportunity to do lots of fun things in cybersecurity. Like I built the SIM infrastructure for West Virginia, the state of West Virginia. Also worked with Cyber Command Director Ray Latier for the U.S. Marine Corps, and worked with a few other folks from the Air Force to the Navy, providing some, I'll say, advisory strategies, if you would, some securitization things. Also worked with one of the co-founders of PGP Encryption, who's now working with Apple, actually, in their security area. His first name is John. I'll leave the rest alone. Everybody else can do their own research on that one. So I have a lot of those types of working relationships with folks that are doing some very interestingly deep cybersecurity concerns. Originally, they were thinking that the quantum system would be able to deal with a lot of these things. Actually, I believe it can, under proper guidance and models, if you would. But again, I'll suggest that everything for the good could also be used for nefarious purposes as well. It just depends on who's behind the wheel, if you would, the makers and the checkers. But as far as cybersecurity is concerned, there's a lot of things that we can do. I think, you touched on some very interesting points, of which I agree to an area. I don't want to jump into where my personal belief is on what the government's influence is on this. I don't think that's going to add any depth of context. Yet where I feel the strongest challenges will be is on the social hacking that is so easily done on individuals to do that natural, create that vulnerability into these systems. And really what we have to do to combat that, in my opinion, is have more, you don't have to be technology aware. You have to be, what's the right way of saying this? Self-aware of things that seem right and those that seem just flat wrong.
Yes, it's a social awareness as well, because social skills is really the new social system is digital in terms of people interacting with each other. And I had my daughter on the show a couple episodes back from a banking perspective, treasury banking, and she was talking about that is the biggest thing banking industries are concerned about right now is how people are being duped, not by sophisticated governments or anything locking up their computer, just stupidly falling for one scam or another that uses technology to go ahead and steal your bank account or access to any number of codes on here. So do you make some trips to Washington to go tell folks what to do, or you get to have a Zoom meeting, so to speak, when you get to help out there?
Yeah, currently it's just Zoom meetings is what goes on right now, and I'm not a real big advocate of driving into the D.C. area. It's just not a pleasant environment to be within. However, that being said, there are some meetings that are getting set up for me to meet with both state representatives and national representatives on some of these initiatives that we've got underway.
Do you have a recommendation for a particular antiviral security program that people can use on a computer, or is it a good enough choice that 5 or 6 top-line ones and they're all just as good as the other?
Yeah, okay, so that's a really easy question. I mean, most of these systems come with them anyway. Just use whatever they've got applied. I mean, the Windows has its own Defender. And again, it's really about the social hacking. You're not going to get a lot of those crazy viruses pounding down on top of you. I don't want to get into the infrastructure, tie-ins, securitization pieces. There's a lot. But your simple desktop computer, go ahead and use that. I would also recommend using a VPN for any kind of internet access.
Yeah.
I think that's a good practice to be into. It helps maintain a degree of anonymity and some proper blocks so your data doesn't get captured between the two endpoints.
Yeah, we talked about that as well on a prior show where there was a potential bill that if anybody was using a virtual private network, that you were up to no good, and therefore they were going to have potential surveying of those type of individuals. So I don't know how that bill's come along. I've lost track of that, but it's certainly the people who are trying to steal from you are probably definitely using a virtual private network, bouncing around the world in the cyber world as it is here.
Yeah.
Now, with the security issue, isn't that one of the best things that a blockchain protocol can give people is an added level of confidence about security of their data? Or am I wrong on that assumption?
No, I think you're right. Again, it's about the implementation on the application and the use of it, right? Yeah, I don't like talking about some of the coin utilization because those coin utilizations are really about fragmented work activity. That's a little bit different than the securitization of the data as it resides in a data center or wherever they've got it housed. But yes, it absolutely can because it creates a distributed ownership of a chunk of that data, so it doesn't fall prey to a single location. And there's maker-checker controls in place. In other words, if I do the work, someone else is validating the work who's actually completed and effectively before it gets applied to the data chain, if you would. So I think it does and will have a material impact as it continues to mature across industries.
I know we hear about the internet's vulnerabilities. I don't think the internet can be stopped anymore, even if it's just too fragmented itself where you can cut off pieces of it. But there are a lot of things in nature where you can chop it into 20 parts and 20 new things will grow from that.
Mm-hmm.
And we need electricity to exist. So I don't see the concepts of how we move information, the web as we call it, going away. I think the blockchain concept is beyond extinction right now. I don't think that's. I think it's unstoppable.
I agree.
I go cross-eyed trying to keep up with the new layers of applications and complexity that people are building into blockchain and cryptocurrency, and they've accomplished that in just a few years. When you think about the creation of money from handing seashells back and forth to each other and being comfortable that it was a fair exchange of services, and then the fact that government can make money out of thin air, that's what they're supposed to do, people. So don't let anybody scare you when they say the Fed is printing money out of thin air. That's what it's supposed to do. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't have to have a Federal Reserve system that's interloping since 1913. Go look up that one. We have a group of bankers that said to the federal government, oh, you need money? Well, go ahead and print it like you always do, but then you borrow it from us at interest. And then this whole layer of bonds and treasuries and this and that, and the parasites that have fed along this money system here, all the way to having put options and derivatives. No one understands all this stuff. It took 100 years for that level of complexity to grow. The blockchain and crypto are that complex already in just less than a decade, but in a whole different manner. It's actually a good thing. Yeah. I think that we've created a way where if people are afraid of the central bank digital currency, and that the government may decide if you're worthy of using their money because it will be their control system. Do you have enough carbon credits? Have you been socially good? That kind of stuff. But the cryptocurrency system that we have is not going to go away either. So I believe that'll be our new cash. And sure, the coin in my pocket may never be existing again. But as long as the electricity system runs, it will. As long as the internet is there, it will. And as long as the government say we have our digital currency, we're going to have our own, and it'll be our new cash. So what I'm trying to teach you all here is a health skill, is getting rid of some of your fears, your uncertainties about things, but I'm trying to teach you where you need to learn things. So you need to come in and listen to me when it comes to your health habits, but you need to listen to folks like this gentleman here, that you have got to start getting smarter about using the blockchain system. Read about it, make it a little homework assignment, because remember, your brain needs to be learning something all the time if it doesn't want to get old. And I don't mean just doing a crossword puzzle. You have to learn something regularly to keep brain cells regenerating. So it may take you a lifetime to learn how to figure out blockchain. Is that ongoing? Fine, make it that way. But if you stay ahead of this fear, then you're going to do well, because one of the biggest reasons that people lose their health is financial stresses and worries. One of the biggest things that breaks up marriages, financial things. And you know, one of the biggest things that causes that collapse is a health problem that causes more bankruptcies. So you see here, this is all relevant here. So learn about cryptocurrency, because it's not as complicated. I'm still struggling with what a token and a coin is. Tell me that difference. Is there a simple way to explain the difference of a token or a coin?
I'm not going to. That's a very deep conversation that'll go on for hours. So
you see what I mean? Well, there's no easy answer to it. But is there a way, if you had a little physical thing, a token and a coin?
Well, they're neither physical. They're not physical to begin with,
right? So you can't even do that.
Right. I mean, from a security perspective, we have tokens to pass information along to make sure that you're actually who you say you are. In this example, a coin or a coin would be a digital representation of a value of something. So there's a simple definition for you, and you'll hear other definitions in that same. Everybody will inject their own optic into that as well. I think the important piece to really kind of walk away with this is, and let's really, the problem with first of all, I'm not really big on using technobabble, right? Buzzwords, because they just blur the lines on everything. It's so umbrella, so ambiguous, it's not defined. What I like to do is make things real so they can understand them real easy. You could think of blockchain as a distributed ledger technology, which is the same thing as the banking ledger, if you would, right? Every action or transaction that occurs to a bank account, there's a line item for it. So it just continues to add on that information. So if we think about it from that optic, it helps create a level of understanding. Now, it's not a definitive level of understanding, but it gives you a baseline so you can build upon. We can add into that if you're going to a bank and you're depositing money in the account. We have a few things going on in the bank. We have individuals that are looking to make sure that the money going in or money going out is true and valid. You have other people checking the cash or checking the balances to make sure it's fair and accurate. That's what they call a smart contract for blockchain. These are very basic, right? I'm trying to give it a very basic, very real, understandable element. But if we start with that, I think we'll go a long way. And so that is how I would rather see blockchain identified. And where I see organizations creating, I like to call it confusion or chaos about the understanding of what this is and creating that complexity. If you can't explain it simply, you simply don't understand it. And it's got to be articulated in a way that people can really kind of gravitate toward it and want to know more.
I've been reading about the evolution of the web, Web 1.0, Web 2.0. We're coming up on Web 3.0. Some say it won't exist until AI has taken control of it. We're interacting with AI a lot right now as that's being foisted upon us. We're all in beta mode testing with it too, and it's learning from us here. But there's a lot of limitations. It still may be nothing more than glorified machine learning, I guess, at this point. We've talked a little bit about the cryptocurrency and how it's growing, and that will be one of the underlying things of Web 3.0 is the movement of commerce, so to speak. And then we're going to get into one of the big commerce aspects is real estate. There's a term, though, called the metaverse. Facebook, and my favorite Zuckerberg name here, has decided to call itself Meta. What does the word metaverse mean to you? Have you pondered that one lately?
I pondered it for a short period of time, and there's a reason for that, right? Because it's not a clear definition. It's more of a marketing brand. And one of the big challenges that I've had with a lot of folks around privacy policies on websites and things like that, if you don't read those privacy policies in terms of use, you won't notice that they have rights to your metadata. And the reality of it is, what is metadata? Well, I don't want to walk down that path. That's another long conversation. But if we don't take the proper controls to really understand what our meta is, or our metadata, and we have a lot of it, we're giving it away. And some of the contracts that are in place these days don't really address those. And without it, you're going to lose control of it. It actually defines you. So with the depth of meta information about, such as yourself, I could learn more about you without the data. I don't need the data. I only want the metadata. And the metadata tells a story, and you can create some very interesting record sets on your character, your interests, very possibly your next steps, things that you would be doing under current environmental and socioeconomic inputs.
So basically, anytime we're using something that moves data, so if we get a credit card transaction at a gas station, the metadata is that a transaction occurred at that time and at that location, but it doesn't give them exactly what brand of gas you bought or how much you spent, but at least tags you there. Then if you go across the street to the grocery store, it'll show you over there. So that's what you're talking about. It just builds a picture of what
builds
you're
a
doing.
habit. I mean, a lineage of your activity. So with the depth of metadata, I can tell you, with a degree of accuracy, I can tell you what your next step will be tomorrow. I can almost get to the point where I can tell you what you'll do throughout your day.
So the way I understand the metaverse and the cybersecurity and the cyber cryptocurrency and Web 3.0 is that the Web 3.0 is supposed to be a more decentralized system, though, in general, where there's more peer-to-peer and more artificial intelligence working with us instead of what people can program, something like a Google search engine to let you see or not see, so to speak, like that. Nobody has a projection as to when this thing will be running and we'll say we're in Web 3.0. What do you think, 5 years from now, 10? Any guess on how close we are for that version?
I think we're closer to it than you think, and they're not. I don't hear it called. Well, I hear it called Web 3.0, but I think it's more of a marketing branding. Someone's really trying to declare credit for what that really is. Some of the things I've seen from some of the national laboratories are really about the quantum internet, right? And what that will become, and how these data, these meta collectors, will be feeding that environment. So they'll have a clear awareness of the action and interaction of society in demographic areas. So I think all of it is part and parcel, but I still don't have a clear definition of what that really means. It's not clear as to what it will become. I think we get a lot of confusion going on machine learning, artificial intelligence. I have yet to find anyone that's been able to give me a very clear articulation of what artificial intelligence is. Most want to say it's a sentient being, the ability to process like a human, if you would, in a decentralized data, loaded with meta information. Machine learning is pretty straightforward. You're dealing with classical systems that are pulling record sets, doing probabilities, the closeness to relative actions that you'll be taking. But I think we're going to be shifting from classical to quantum. That will be, I feel, the Web 3.0.
When we're looking at what kind of data is moving over the internet and who's watching it, before I get off the thought of metadata, I know a lot of that is privately collected and sold. Does the government collect its own metadata, or they buy it from private companies, do you think, or both?
I think it's both. I mean, you're aware of the Utah data center facility that has 2 zip codes, right? I mean, right? You're aware of that one, right?
The NSA's one out
there?
there?
Yeah, the NSA's data center. It's so big it has 2 zip codes. What if I told you I was there for the groundbreaking?
Oh, did they let you snip the?
I was there for the groundbreaking. I'll leave it like that. I know what's in there.
If
right?
we can get that picture, we'll superimpose.
You'll
it,
never get that
folks.
picture. There's never a photo for that.
I had a feeling there wasn't because it's the National Security Agency. So
I just called it a government data center. I'm not going to.
All right, so there's a lot of data, folks, and most people don't care anymore. There's so much you get lost in the crowd. So it doesn't matter what it is. You just want to show the world everything about yourself, and people just don't care anymore. They're willing to give up their privacy. So I guess that's.
Well, let me add something to that, right? So let's just play this game, right? So if you're giving up your data and your information freely and without apprehension, think about what's being done with ML right now. They're superimposing people's faces into scenarios and environments that they were never in. And they're having to come through and quantify the fact that that is not real. You have movie stars that are being superimposed in situations that are just not, they're completely fabricated. So if you're doing this and you say, I don't worry about it because I'm not doing anything wrong, well, what about the potential of recharacterizing that data and information for malice, for the justification of convicting you for something, well, you never did, right? So your privacy should be paramount.
I understand there's a company that has, for a fee, they can take any video evidence, deep fake if suspected, and tell you if that thing has been created by these deep fake software. So far, there's still a signature, a smoking gun left behind on there, and I guess whoever owns that company might be very valuable right now. But sooner or later, there'll be a point where I don't think you'll be able to discern a difference, right?
Well, the reality of it is it doesn't matter. Does it really matter? Let me explain to you why. The second that gets out in the Wild West, it becomes a reality of people's minds, right? The people don't sit through and go, well, is this true or false? Is this real or Memorex or fake? Memorex for the old folks, right?
Right.
But the reality of it is it doesn't matter. If it's out there one time, it only takes one time, and it becomes a very discrediting element that's applied to the individual.
Guilty till proven innocent.
Exactly.
Ultimately.
So why do you put yourself up for those things? You should really, everyone should really consider privatizing their information and not giving it away for free. I don't do social website stuff for the fundamental reason that, because my information is my information. If I want to share it, I'll share it independently and individually with yourself or others that I want to.
All right. Well, I think we've gone down that slippery slope so far that we're going to need some other salvation for us because human behavior is still, unfortunately, very predictable and very manipulatable.
It's not with that. I mean, it's absolutely, you can do something about it, but you got to do something about it today. You've got to take an initiative and an interest to really kind of protect yourself. You really do. That's all it really is.
Well, you got to have someone scouring the web for you, and that's what we pay these companies to your ID security to see if you showed up. And it's gotten to the point where they say, we found your Social Security number on the deep, dark web. And I go, tell me something I don't know. It's already been out there. I've been impersonated dozens of times. I just do everything I can to keep an eye on what does the implications mean when it comes to my most precious thing is your asset, how secure is your titles? And that's what's going to be our next topic coming up real quickly. How secure is your bank accounts too? And if they can't get any of that, then you're just left with criminal charges being made up against you if somebody really wants to take you down, so to speak. Real estate, though, is a big part of what our growth as a human race is. You want to own something of value, you get yourself a piece of land, you build the building on it, you build a business within that building. So real estate, as we call it, there's still land that nobody owns. Some have claimed parts of that land, and then you may be able to buy it from a government. How much land under Antarctica is owned by anybody if nobody's up there? But as far as where most civilization's been for thousands of years, somebody owns it. So anyway, real estate is something that we want to own, we should own. It can become part of our portfolio. We can borrow against it, live on it, do things with it. And the real estate market, commercial, residential, has a value to it that is estimated to be half of all the things that we create value of in the world. and then the ability to play musical chairs and exchange that real estate. You have a reason to move from one home to another, buy this building, buy that land, etc. Those transactions that people are making money on, brokers and title companies and lawyers, that's where Harold Hurd has taken a quantum step, so to speak, without going quantum. That amount of transaction, though, is still big, even though it, by what I'm reading, is 5 to 7% of all the money that moves around every single year in every single economy. That's a staggering amount of money when you talk about over $100 trillion movement of global economy. So we are part of a groundbreaking company here that we're going to talk about a real blockchain solution. You had another name for that company. What was it?
Oh, nickname ARBS.
ARBS? No, there was a QI or Q something.
Block QAI, which stands for Blockchain, Quantum, and Artificial Intelligence.
All right.
It's a
but
consultancy services company.
We're going to go by a real blockchain solution.
Yes.
Is what the public is going to be getting their name on.
Yes.
And we're starting out here with him working in real estate, and then there's all kind of potential other applications. But because, again, real estate is half of what our world is made up in terms of stability for your finances, and he's going to create that stability for you by giving you a new network to manage that real estate on. Not just sell it even. You'll be able to park a title on the blockchain, too, and have security, because now you got to have title theft lock companies out there saying if somebody took your title and borrowed money against your house, and then you lose your house on that. So with that being said, how long have you been working at a real blockchain solution, conceptually to where you're at today?
Well, we started the company in 2018. We started as an LLC. We just recently converted from an LLC to a C Corp for a lot of reasons, investment reasons, right? But we started in 2018, and it started, it's very interesting and fascinating. I'm just so that you give some depth of context. We're launching focused in Texas, North Texas specifically right now. But I'm one of the original founders of the Texas Blockchain Council, so I work with and have worked with them since the inception and creation of that. And the reason we've been working on this since 2018 is there's a lot of things that have to change in order to have a really effective implementation of this type of technology. There's state legislation that has to be written, state legislation that has to be updated. Most recently, this past session, we're able to get the UCC code updated for the state of Texas, which allows us to do transactions on a blockchain, which is very fascinating. We've got more legislation we have to get prepared for next session. So we're working with some of the state representatives on that. Building a technology is easy. And what I mean by that is easy. But when you're trying to build a technology against one of the oldest and most rooted environments in the nation, such as real estate or property, right? I mean, it's all the way back into the Constitution, right? And so what we have to be able to do is really take a holistic time to look at all the pieces and parts and all the dynamics within it and really kind of create an ecosystem that allows us to do that, the proper management from the end-to-end of the entire real estate transaction cycle. It's not just about buying and selling. It's about operating that asset and the development of an asset and the disposition of the asset and this entire life cycle, if you would. So we started in 2018, started out collecting and aggregating data from state organizational areas, working with and looking to partner with certain governmental agencies like the General Land Office, the Railroad Commission, the Secretary of State, just to name a few. At the state level and even at the county level, it's working with the county clerk, the legal system, right? And all the elements inside the county that actually touch anything having to do with real estate, a real estate asset. But then we even take another level deeper to that. We actually start working with the cities because the cities are tracking and maintaining a lot of property that is inside their city dynamics because city taxes and things of that nature. So there's, as you can see, the web gets deeper the farther you go, and that's just one side of the equation. We see at ARBS, we see four key stakeholders. We see the buyer-seller. We see the funding source. The buyer and the seller, those two separate entities. The funding source, in other words, who's going to do the origination of the loan, and the government entity. Those are the four keys. Other than that, other intermediaries are not necessarily required. Initially they will be, but ultimately it'll get maturized to a point where you'll be able to buy and sell property within hours, not weeks or days or months. We're launching in the commercial space to allow us to really kind of fortify and validate, because we've been working really diligently in that space as well. We do have some commercial assets that are ready to launch in this environment, and we're looking forward to doing some of those transactions. We are also pre and post quantum ready. We will be one of the quantum ready blockchain environments. We'll be able to incorporate some of those encryptions in the blockchain itself. So it'll help mitigate, I said help mitigate, those cyber considerations, right? People, nefarious actors that are looking to destroy or take your information. And I find it fascinating that you actually talked about title insurance, or not title insurance, people stealing your title. If you think about it, because the ecosystem we're building, you have the county that's integrated into it, you have the funding sources integrated into it, and the owner and the buyer and seller, right? You'll know if there's any kind of nefarious activity going on within your title in this ecosystem. We'll notify you. I mean, and that's not even a fee. That's just kind of there as a compliment, if you would, right? Because we find it important. Initially, we're looking to load counties into this environment. We've got some proposals out to a few counties here in North Texas, looking to move them into this ecosystem, just waiting for some responses. And we're waiting on cycles that they work within, right? And as you know, anything in government moves at speeds that only geologists can measure. And again, that's why it's taken so much time.
All right, so Governor Abbott had signed the thing about getting Texas to lead the world in blockchain technology. Was there any timeframes where they said, and you got to have this done, say to the county clerk offices, or they're just going to take their sweet time and 20 years from now, we still haven't fulfilled his vision for blockchain, let's say, technological readiness?
Sure. So there's legislation that is out there. I believe you can find the legislation documents on the Texas Blockchain Council. You'll find the one for real estate out there, of which we've been working behind the scenes and with the team to get these things in place to put together a real estate assessment for a couple of counties. We feel like we have a good feel for those counties of who they'll be, but we're working with a lot of them, right? And so we're waiting for that legislation to get passed. Didn't make it this past session. We're hopeful it will this one up and coming. But we do have conversations with some counties that, again, have proposals in front of them to get the pilot in place. We're very excited about it, and they are too. And there's a few of them are actually excited about it because they want to be first, and others that are nervous about the fact that others want to be first and they don't want to be left behind. So we feel like once this turns, this will move fast. We believe this next session will be the session that cements that. Is that a hard and fast for the implementation of what we're putting together? No. Is it nice to have, good to have? Yes. It actually continues to enrich this ecosystem that we're building in ARBS. ARBS will become that ecosystem where anything you'd ever want to do with a piece of real estate, whether commercial or residential, will be transacted in this environment. Anything that you need to do. And we're talking, some of the third-party integrators we're also talking with is Lowe's Home Improvement. Everybody's walked into Home Depot or Lowe's and said, hey, what project are you working on? Well, in this environment, when you actually say I'm working on my home, they'll say, hey, what's that address? They'll be able to add that information to the queue for you to validate that was actually part of the activity that you're adding to or value you're adding to that asset.
Wow.
Which gives you some strong traction on viability of investment.
The state of Texas, therefore, is one of our world's biggest economies in the top 10, and real estate is a big part of that. And your company is probably going to be the one to set the rules. And let's talk about patents. You are in the process of patenting what? The conceptualized principles here. What can you patent? You can't patent code. What are you patenting about a real blockchain solution?
Well, we're patenting the processes. And by the way, this is an international and international patent, so it's not just inside the United States, right? What we're doing is we're processing every aspect, and the patent office was shocked that what we're patenting has never been patented before, because what our patent title, and I'm going to try to quote it, but if I'll paraphrase, it's the buy, sell, operate, and development of real estate. That's the title, of which they've granted me that title. That's actually the grandfather patent, if you would. So we have children patent coming out of that, which we filed this past June. And so we're very excited about it. That's where we get into the depth of every one of those verticals that we've identified within the company.
So if they wanted to really be bad about it, years from now, any real estate transaction that's not using your network might be in violation of their patent one way or the other. We don't want to make threats to the people out there, but you got to.
Well, the cool thing is I don't have to threaten anybody. That's why I have patent attorneys. Those guys get to talk about this all day long. I don't want to speculate and go in that space. They have called me and said, "Hey, Harold, we believe this company might be in violation of your patent. What do you want us to do?" I said, "Well, that's your job. You tell me what we need to be doing, and we'll go from there." It's been very interesting. I've had a few different companies actually come to me and are aware of these patents that are in place and are wanting to meet with me about them. And we're looking at some considerations in certain things, but haven't made a decision on anything. So, and no follow up at this point.
So here's where we're at with a real blockchain solution. Cutting edge, patented technology, a person very intelligent when it comes to the writing of code, cybersecurity, the blockchain, quantum computers. And what is the benefit, though, of using a company like a real blockchain solution to any other company, because there's going to be competitors. I see them coming.
Of course.
We might say that the speed of the transaction is going to be a big thing. Eventually, you'll be able to, as I heard you say, get to a 24-hour turnover of a piece of property.
Or faster would be ideal. The biggest lag on this is wire transfers from banks. They're only open window to window, right?
Uh-huh.
And until we get some of the State Banking Commission laws updated. Wait, did I just let that cat out of the bag? Anyway, until we get some of those things updated where we can actually do wire transfers 24 hours a day, we're talking about big capital being moved, and that's kind of really the.
And now also the time frame is not just it's the tip of the iceberg. It's how much money people can save. We all know how many things are tacked on to that closing statement, and especially if you're buying a multi-million-dollar real estate in commercial. Eventually, it's going to be good now, but even better later. When you guys are fully implemented, 50% savings for people, more than that. Give me a rough idea, if you had to dream here, where it could go.
Yeah, so that's a variable. Let me explain to you why I say that. When you deal with organizations that buy and sell real estate a lot, they have internal operating costs, and then they have actual capital they have to spend. We actually try to only focus on the CapEx side. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to get really financial techie on this. I'm going to try to keep it basic and simple. I will tell you that we met with one of the world's premier real estate organizations. Its first letter starts with a C. I'm going to stop there. But I met with the CIO and the CFO, and we talked about what we're building. And they were able to articulate to us the value proposition they would have from an operation cost reduction. They saw an operating cost reduction of 68% of internal operation cost in transactions. Just from an organization-wide, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But we were able to put back into the CapEx 21%. So extra spending capital was able to be moved over from that through their organization into the CapEx side. Now, the transaction side, I see a range of things happening on the buy-sell. When we're talking commercial, it just kind of depends on your relationships, who you're working with. Are you predominantly, running the gamut of all the roles and responsibilities in the transaction, or are you offshooting that through another organization? But I've seen ranges between we could reduce their cost by 4 to 12%. Again, it depends on the size of the deal and the organization themselves. Most of the smaller ones, we save more. Some of the bigger ones, it's less. It's only because they may have an internal infrastructure in place to handle some of those processes. But regardless, we're seeing a savings on every transaction, whether a buy or a sell.
I think the government has a lot of stake in this when you think about, well, their biggest role will be the records, the titles, the county clerk's offices.
Sure.
and they have a certain amount of inefficiency. Imagine that. But government should be excited about this as well for what it should be able to do for them. I'm sure all the government employees are going to have to no longer have a job standing at that county clerk's office getting you the big file out that when to see where the blueprints are. But ultimately, their savings could be 30, 50% or more for what I'm seeing this do, right?
Well, it's yes, and it's much bigger than that. So they're understaffed, underpaid, right? And they can't move fast enough. So what we're doing in this automation of these processes is allowing them to work with the resources that they have. And so they don't have to go back and ask for more resources to continue doing the work. It's everyone in the North Texas area is just growing at leaps and bounds, and their workload, their backlog is huge. From the 911, what's setting up the address, to the county clerks that are actually doing the record keeping of it, and all the way from all the research, and even, believe it or not, the title plants that are currently part of the equation. What I'm hearing from some of the counties is that they're very frustrated with the title plants because they don't have clear access to the information they have without the encumbrances of those services, which slows down their delivery optics and increases their cost. And at the end of the day, increases the cost to the constituents who own the property. So, it just rolls downhill. So we have a huge vision in this space to have the counties completely integrated for all transactions related to real estate, and that's from legislative to judicial to any legal documents that come in through the courts, any assessor district information that comes in on taxation, even some of those special taxation assessments that come through, and even integration of the GIS organization. Yes, we will also carry GIS data, and that was another fun fact that we've actually worked with the National Geological Society and looked at their current data model, and we've actually put together a proposal for a blockchain environment for that as well. So we're doing a lot of different things in this space, and we're really trying to look at, if you look and take a piece of property and slice it at the top, it looks like a cone, right? It's going to go all the way down to the mineral rights. We're even incorporating and working in the space of moving to air rights as we start to see drones. We'll see some of these flying cars at some point. We'll be prepared to help real estate owners capitalize on some of that revenue.
I'm also seeing people are just going to be buying pieces of real estate. How many owners will ultimately, by the millions, have a piece of the real estate of the Empire State Building, almost like an NFT type of thing? Your company is also going to be able to handle fractional sales of things, or you want to stick with just whole pieces right now?
I think initially, I see and hear a lot of real estate people tokenizing real estate, and I've looked at a lot of the algorithms of which they're going through this tokenization process. At the end of the day, there are some fundamental gaps. I don't want to go into them right now, but what we're doing is we are not tokenizing on the initial. We'll hit the tokenization once we move to the operational side of the equation and the delivery of the products that we're providing, because what we'll be doing is not tokenizing an organization, as most tokenization companies are doing right now. We'll actually be tokenizing the deed and title. So we're getting to that level. And so you don't run the risk of being something sold out from underneath you.
All right, folks. Well, another show is wrapping up here. What we're going to do is I'm going to flash a thing right in front of me here as to a website you can go look at. And at the end of the show, you'll be able to see links. You may want to invest in this technology before it becomes out of your reach, before the rest of the public gets it. Support this man. Support a real blockchain solution. And let's get this company out there saving all of us money. Your taxes will go down. Your stress level will go down. Your security goes up. And with that, good day, America.